success of Event Horizon, 1998 saw Paul W.S. Anderson not straying from the sci-fi genre as he teamed up with David Webb Peoples, best known as the writer of Blade Runner, to bring to the screen a long-mooted sidequel to Blade Runner, which had been long in digestion for around 15 years at this point. Now, under the title of Soldier, the film itself had to, due to various legal reasons, had to remove all links to Blade Runner, instead being turned into a summer action blockbuster with elements of hard sci-fi, making it certainly an interesting prospect and one which saw it finally finding an audience when it was released on DVD. The film itself sees Kurt Russell, a soldier trained from birth, finding himself now rendered obsolete and literally rendered on the junk heap as he finds himself stranded on a junk planet, only to soon find that his former employers are now using the site as a test site for their new generation of soldiers. I'm Elwood.
I'm Kim.
And you're listening to Movies and Tea. Let's take it to the booth. Movies and Tea, and tonight we are going to be looking at the 1998 film Soldier. This is probably one of the lesser known films, I think right next to Shopping when we look at the Paul W.S. Anderson filmography. I mean, certainly this was a film that I hadn't seen, I don't think you'd seen.
No, I
Kim,
haven't.
And so this was like a real blind watch for both of us, which is kind of unusual. I mean, I was aware of this film, I just never, for one reason or another, never actually got around to watching it. I think I was in college and I remember people talking about it, but, you know, for whatever reason, I was just renting other things. I was watching Requiem for a Dream or Virgin Suicides or some art house nonsense that I was probably into at the time. It now makes me wonder why we're not obviously talking, more people aren't talking about this film, as it's certainly an unusual mix of a film. I mean, we got elements, as we mentioned already, of hard sci-fi and that summer blockbuster action, as Kurt Russell, despite his aging status, I mean, the man never looks like he's ages, but here he is certainly the aging action hero, decides to strap on his action boots for like another round of hard-hitting action, and certainly delivers, from my opinion. But, I mean, opening thoughts on this one, Kim, I mean, what did you think of Soldier?
I thought Soldier was pretty good. Obviously, yeah, you said it already. Like, it's definitely one of the... It seems like maybe something of a less known film from Anderson, and like I said, I haven't watched it before, but that's not really surprising since for Kurt Russell's fame, I actually haven't seen a lot of his films. So
okay,
yeah, I remember one of his films really, really a lot, and that was The Thing. And that's the only one I really remember that I've seen. I think I started Big Trouble in Little China once, and I never actually went back to finish it. It's not because the movie wasn't good, it's just because I was in like some crazy phase and I never went back to watch it. But yeah, I mean, like, obviously I've seen him in like the Fast series and stuff like that. Was it Fast or Expendables? I can't remember anymore.
He's in the Fast series, right? Movies now.
Yeah. So yeah, no, I mean, I thought this one was really good. Pretty good. I don't think it was really good. I think there were it's definite flaws in it. But I think that one of the reasons why it didn't catch on as much as it did, and I was looking around and it seems like it gets really low ratings, and I think it's mainly because it's really similar, especially like when you look at the world it's set in that sort of like broken down world. It resembles a lot of, say, Mad Max or something. Like kind of like this junkyard world where everything is just broken apart and you're caught up in that thing. And you know, with the amount of respect that people have for Mad Max, it seems like, you know, sometimes when movies come a little too close to what some other film is. And I mean, we talked about this for Event Horizon as well, how, you know, if you were to compare Event Horizon to something else, which was really similar, that could be one of the reasons why it has a cult following, but nothing really, like, you know, it doesn't get a lot of points for, I guess, uniqueness. But Soldier is really good. It has some really nice characters. I mean, Kurt Russell does a really great job at the action sequences. A lot of it is pretty cool to watch. I mean, you know, you start off right away and, you know, just rendering him obsolete. You know something bad is going to happen when he enters in this fight with this like genetically engineered soldier. And you can't help when you watch a film like this to be like, when you look at the timestamps that are there and you're like, wow, our world isn't like that.
Yeah, I mean, this is way into the post-apocalyptic future, and certainly this junk planet, I can see where you're obviously with the comparisons to Mad Max, and I mean, I don't think when this film was released, a lot of people would have picked up on that, because I mean, Mad Max, before Fury Road came out, there's like a whole group of people who never even heard of Mad Max. I remember when it was like in the lead up to Fury Road coming out, and I remember going on the Lambcast, and I was like, I'm so excited for the trailer for Mad Max. I've just seen it at Comic-Con, and I cried watching the trailer. It was like so beautiful, and everyone's like, what's Mad Max? And I was like, well, it's kind of like Fast and Furious, but on crack. So I remember these little blank stares at the time, but yeah, I can definitely see the link. Certainly on a video game slant, it brings to mind Fallout, especially for myself.
For sure, like Fallout definitely goes into that category. I mean, if you were talking to me before Fury Road, I would not know what Mad Max is either. I've never actually successfully finished Mad Max. So, like, I don't understand, like, the hype for myself. I just don't get the pacing.
Okay.
But I understand the world, you know? But obviously we're talking about Soldier, and I think one of the really good things about Soldier is that I think after we've talked about Anderson's films so much and just his directing style, you really see a lot of those previous styles really coming together. And in this one, there are some beautifully framed shots. And I think that at this point, it's starting to really become apparent that he is quite the artist behind the camera. Like, he really knows how to craft these beautiful angles and really capture, like, the essential things that make this shot stand out and show what is important to the audience and just, you know, kind of accentuate on that world that this is set in.
Oh, definitely. He's a very underrated as a visual director, I find, with Anderson's work, and it's certainly once you highlight the regular themes within his work and sort of his stylistic flares. I mean, certainly we get a classic example of his God's Eye view after the chain fight sequence, where the camera not only pans upwards to go that to beautiful bird's eye view, but it rotates as it moves, which is just really gorgeous shot, and something we certainly see more in the Resident Evil films. It became like one of his trademark shots in that series. There's less, obviously, when we look at some of his other trademarks, such as like the endless corridors and the symmetry. That's less used to an effect here.
Well, there was still a decent amount. I mean, one of the first moments where, like, you know, the soldiers just standing there, and you really see that shot where there are those, the colonel and the other guy, I don't remember. There was a colonel and the other trainer, right? And then there were their two soldiers lined up face to face, and that was a very symmetrical shot. That was one of those first shots that really stood out to me. And then, you know, you have those chains in the, like, right in the center of the screen, just dangling down. You know, obviously, you know, you had a lot of, like, pulled back shots where, you know, when he first went, like, found himself in the junkyard, like that wasteland area, he, like, walks out and he's like the center. He's like that center character as you see, like, the broken pieces around him. And I think that that's still it's kind of still symmetrical, I guess.
I would say that falls. I mean, again, it's certainly an Anderson trademark shot. I mean, it's one of those classic centered shots. I mean, it's something we've sort of neglected on the previous episodes to discuss, and certainly when you look at things such as like Mortal Kombat and Event Horizon, you can really see those centered shots come into play. And I think here it's all the more powerful when we look at how he's presenting this junkyard planet, because it looks and feels like a much more expansive universe. It feels often that we could go for miles in a direction and just see more piles of these junks that these scavengers are sort of living amongst. And just the way he, as I said, his camera work is just so good, and his sense of scale in particular really gives everything, makes it not seem like you're on a set. It makes it seem like you're in an actual, this sort of post-apocalyptic desert environment, this like futuristic junkyard that these scavengers are basically made a life for themselves out of scavenging things that other planets are dumping on their planet. And it's an interesting contrast as well, especially when you look at the desert planet and we look at the military structures, because at the opening of the film we have this we have this opening sequence where orphaned infants are selected from birth to be raised to be soldiers. And we see Sergeant Todd, Kurt Russell's character, basically his whole backstory is followed through sort of junctures in his life, and it shows the different training that they undergo, these kids to go. And I think it's such a great training montage because it shows how these kids are being taught to be cold and ruthless killers. Like we have the scene where they have like the animal day in the classroom, and they got the warthog and then they got the attack dogs, and you think, oh, they're just going to show them these animals sort of like growling at them, and they have to sort of face and look at them, and then nope, we're going to put the animals together and watch them kill each other. And you see the one child try to look away, and the instructor just calmly uses baton just to make him force his head back so he has to sort of witness this gore. And throughout it's just constantly like we're dehumanizing these children, we're training them so they're just the perfect killing machine. And it actually ties back into very realistic military training, because after World War One and Two, the military discovered that they could have reduced their losses because many soldiers were going into combat and unable to fire their weapons because their mindset was that they couldn't kill another human being. So now when you look at modern military training, it's all about putting trainees in the mindset so that it's like a flicking of a switch that they can just like go into combat zones and do the job that's required, and in turn reduce the amount of potential casualties that can be on the battlefield. And here we're seeing sort of like the extreme version of this. These orphan kids, and they're just by the time they're finished, they're sort of like emotionless killing machines. Yet they have their own established code of honor, like they won't harm civilians. Whereas when we see this new genetically engineered soldiers that are brought in, and in particular we've got the sort of head of this unit, Kane, who is played by Jason Scott Lee, who is probably best known for playing Bruce Lee in the Dragon biopic. And they're just, as I said, they've just been bred just so they kill anything. It doesn't really matter if it's innocent or not, they'll kill anything. The new military thinking is that we're just going to breed these soldiers, and it's just all about performing the ultimate killing machine. And that's all it's about, is delivering results. And as you said already, we have the opening scene where Kurt Russell's sort of original soldiers are shown to be how obsolete they are, because you see four of them engaged in this chain fight, which is so cool to look at. These guys just basically climbing up chains and fighting each other like some futuristic version of gladiators or something. And it also makes Kane, his character, look all the more cooler because he gets his eye sort of gouged out, and he has this cool looking scar when we see him, which makes him like instantly more evil than he was before.
I mean, like, I think you make a really good point here, is that, for one, we get to see the montage of just like, Kurt Russell Todd going through these like 17 years of training and all the wars that he's gone through and all these significant events that has crafted to him to be the soldier that he is right now. And the only thing we get of these genetically engineered soldiers is really in that one fight scene. We get to see that fight scene. We get to see that their speed in that just one scene. It crafts who these, I guess, ultimate fighting machines are, as you call them.
It's very good at establishing what each group is certainly capable of doing, and certainly in the sense when we're looking at obviously like just how ruthless these machines are, and it certainly works well as setting this mindset really for when we get into the finale, which is just sort of the balls to the wall action sequence, as we got Todd basically taking on these new genetic soldiers as he acts as the guardian and defender of these people who have sort of took him in. It's great how simple the sort of setup is of how these characters are established and what they're capable of, without requiring masses and masses of backstory. It's all very quick flashes, and it's very direct and straight to the point.
But I think that's what I really like about Anderson's films a lot. He didn't write this one, but I mean, a lot of his films have stories that, have just enough complexity to make it interesting, but not like overly crazy so that it's really, really hard to follow or like a lot of information overload. And I think
Yeah.
that sometimes those things deliver some of the best stories because you don't really need a lot of characters. You see a lot of people, but you focus in on like just a few characters that matter and they really build a story together. And, I think that, what it is that this one is kind of like, we do have a bit of that sci-fi. We have a bit of that action, well, a lot of the action. But then you also have this like kind of comedic insert of him being in this like being thrust into these like this group of people that he's never interacted with normal civilians before in that sort of way, right? And he just feels like, it's just kind of like this fish out of water sort of story. And a lot of it is, I always like these kind of stories because it's like someone learning how to be human again, how to interact. And he's just socially awkward the whole time. And he'll make these like weird things. And he's like, he doesn't say a lot. And whenever he says anything, it's like, just soldier talk. He'll be like, sir, and then da-da-da-da-da. He'll go on and talk about something else. And I think that really still crafts, like, he still stays in his character. But you start seeing, like, that, I don't know what it is I think that, sometimes it's hard to be like, okay, well, Kurt Russell is a fantastic actor. No, he's a fantastic action guy, He does really great action sequences. That's the same thing you can say about Sylvester Stallone. Do you think that he's a great actor? No, he's not a great actor. It's the same concept. And Kurt Russell, actually, in this one, kind of shows that he is actually capable of being a little bit more, because in roles where you actually don't talk a lot, you actually express a lot more through your actions and through your expressions. And I think that it was a side that I really enjoyed watching, and for that reason, I thought Soldier was really great. I mean, aside from like all these familiar faces we've recently seen in this whole Paul W.S. Anderson journey that we've been having.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned already about these villagers, and in particular, I mean, one of the main sort of crutches of the story is the fact that you've got Kurosawa Soji, who, as we mentioned already, I mean, he's been bred for war. Essentially, that's his lot in life, is to go and fight wars for his, I mean, how would you put it, his employer, his army. That's what he's been there for. So he has no real social interactions, and you're basically seeing him when he's in Kansas City villages trying to learn how to interact with humanity, at the same time having to deal with these flashbacks to his military past. He suffers like this, what could almost be seen as like a PTSD syndrome.
Yeah.
And we see him, while the villagers themselves, I mean, they're very quick to welcome him in, even though he's like this, I mean, he's a living weapon, and he has a couple of moments where he endangers the villagers and they actually cast him out, but for whatever reason, he's quite happy to go back when they need him. And I think there's a wonderful scene where, for some reason, this planet is infested with these green snakes. I don't know why these snakes are there. Whether some other planet is like said, like, screw these snakes, we're gonna go and dump them on all this other planet.
Well, it is waste disposal.
Yeah, that's one way of getting rid of the snakes. And we see this snake, and it's going to attack this young boy of the family he's been taken in by, which is Jason Isaacs. No, sorry, it's he's been taken in by Sean Pertwee's family, and his young son. He stops this snake going to attack his young son. At the same time, he like tosses it aside, and he's like almost in a sort of like maximum way. He's like trying to instruct him to like how to kill the snake, how to defend himself by using the boot, and encouraging this child to kill this snake. And obviously, Sean Pertwee's character comes in and he thinks that he's endangering the child's life, and it leads to him being thrown out. But obviously, it comes full circle when later in the film, Sean Pertwee's character and his wife are asleep in bed, and the snake's back, and then the young boy rescues his parents by killing the snake using the method he was seen. And it's almost like that old fable of the king who kills his dog because he believes it was injuring his child, and he found out later the dead snake, and he realizes what was happening. It's almost like you're seeing a variation of that, is that he realizes that when he's cast Todd out, that exactly what he was trying to do. He was trying to teach the boy to be able to survive for himself and not just rely on his parents to be able to survive in this real harsh environment. Now, when we obviously look at Pertwee's character, and in particular his wife, Sandra, played by Connie Nielsen, there's this real undertone that there's going to be a romantic connection between her character and Todd. And spoiler alert now, when Pertwee's character gets blown up, it's sort of like, oh, well, he's out of the picture. That clears the way for those two to get together. And it's really to Anderson's credit that he doesn't do that. He doesn't have Todd suddenly regain his humanity and is able to embark on this relationship. I mean, he allows him that little glimmer of humanity at the end when he picks up the little boy and he points out to the destination they're going to. But I was so glad that he didn't go down the obvious romantic angle the film seemed to be wanting it to go down, because she seems to be flirting hard with Todd.
Yeah, but see, that's the thing is, don't you find that the ending? I have no problem. I think the ending is really great the way they ended it, and I'm really happy they didn't take that romantic angle. But it almost feels like, these are super fascinated with each other. I don't know if I would call it flirting, more than the fact that it feels like she's being a mother to him, teaching him about the world around him and just regular people and how they survive and that sort of their everyday living. But at the same time, she's also kind of fascinated by this kind of cold-hearted killer that seems like he's like the mysterious dude effect,
Yeah.
And then you have him where he's looking at her, that he really is, googly eyes over her. And he's just really it just feels like he's so attracted by this creature, this beautiful creature in front of him that is so tender, is so nice. He's never experienced something like that. And I don't know, I was thinking there would be something romantic going on, but then at the end it kind of felt like, if you think about it a little bit more, maybe it's still, in the horizon that we don't see outside of the frame of this film, right?
Yeah.
And that's an open story that you can think about if you want. Maybe fanfics have been written for it for diehard fans, who knows? But I mean, it's, I really like that story, just with how these two characters are crafted, because at the same time you really see that the wife, Sandra, she is very in love with her husband too. She is in love with her husband is Sean Pertwee, called Mace. So it seems like it's, I don't know. I mean, on one hand, I don't really think that she was being flirty. I think that she was just being a mom. She was being very caring, and he's never experienced it. So, but it's nice that he does keep into his character. But you can see at the end, I think, just by that last scene that you were talking about, where he takes up the boy. He's also, slowly this humanity is infesting him, but nothing really takes away that nature of how he was trained from birth.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the only other example I can give the relationship we see between these two characters, I mean, it reminds me a lot of the Jet Li film Fearless, where his character is sort of taught to remodeled by the blind young girl Moon, played by Lucine. And you see Jet Li's character, and he's very hot-headed and quick to anger, and by teaming up with this young Mongolian girl, and he's taught how to work in sort of the rice paddies, and just, it's almost like a similar sort of scenes we see here when we see her teaching him how to plant the flowers in the gardens that they're planting and stuff here, and these little bits of teaching him how to integrate with society. And I mean, we even see like one of the villagers tries to give him a scarf, and so you see people trying to reach out to him, but at the same time he's so locked in this mindset that he's been living for so long, he just can't let go, even though we do see little glimmers of it outside of obviously his sort of like programming. Like obviously when it comes to like him protecting the villagers, that's easy to understand because he's like, as I said, it's his area of expertise. War is his what he knows. So to protect villagers and kill these new super soldiers, that's not difficult for him. But to obviously engage with other humans on like an emotional level is just something that he really sort of struggles with. And at the same time, he's being constantly plagued with all the things he's done up to landing on this planet. So he's trying to find a way to work through all this. I mean, as I said, it's not something you'd expect to this sort of complexity, much less like the hard sci-fi element that we have throughout this film, especially when you consider how much of a traditional popcorn action movie the final quarter is of this film, where it's just like basically him going around like the Terminator, blowing things up and killing people. I mean, I've never seen a rocket launcher used in such close proximity since like Death Wish 3. It's like
he felt like, man, you know, he was really, really in his element. You know, like that one fight on those chains was definitely not, you know, not all that he had to offer. Because, you know, you watch this part, the ending part is just so great because you watch him and he's like, oh, he starts off really stealthily going through everywhere, and then eventually he takes their weapons and he starts just totally defeating everyone. And then you just watch, like, I don't know if you did it, but they said like the specific amount of soldiers that were there. I think it was like 17 or something like that. And then as each one got killed, like we were like counting down how many were left.
Yeah.
So it was really, it's a, you know, it's a really, in many ways it's also a really fun movie. There's a lot of like satisfaction in the whole production itself.
Oh, definitely. I think the production itself, I mean, first of all, visually it looks fantastic from like, especially if you're into like futuristic military hardware. This is like a lot to enjoy here, and I love the fact that Anderson actually employed shorter actors when we have these big armored vehicles rolling in, which are like basically like converted mine dump trucks, and he employed shorter actors to stand by them so they actually look bigger.
Oh, really?
Than they were. Yeah, he employed actors who were under 5 foot to stand next to the trucks when they were like moving, so that they seemed a lot bigger. Which I thought was a cool little visual trick. And yeah, the look that these new super soldiers have, I mean, they're all in this sort of like gas mask and black armor. It's completely different than obviously Kurt Russell's the original sort of soldier unit, who are just like basically your average army sort of drones. But I think whereas before we've obviously we talked about like with Mortal Kombat, I mean, that was Anderson really trying to make his version of Enter the Dragon. And then when we get into Event Horizon, we have all these like horror nods that he included. I think certainly when you look at this film, again, there's so many nods to other films scattered throughout this film. In particular, Kurt Russell's career. There is various. When you pause on his little rap sheet and his medals, that are all in relation to different Kurt Russell movies. There's bits of when we look in the junkyard, we've got like part of the spinner from Blade Runner. We've got part of the plane from Executive Decision, the movie Kurt Russell did before this. We've even got part of the Lewis and Clark from Event Horizon, which is in there as well. So there's a lot of fun little nods. I mean, there's even like video game references to like Doom in here. If you're willing to look for them, or just if you go for like the IMDb trivia section, there's some really fun little sections here, and it kind of makes me wish that they'd done a sequel to this film had it not been a flop. Certainly Anderson agrees that this is set in the same world as Blade Runner, and he said that if they'd gone back to Earth, then they would have encountered Deckard, Harrison Ford's character from Blade Runner, so they would have tied over more. And certainly when we look at the new Blade Runner movie, 2046?
2049.
2049, sorry. This film actually fits within the timeline. When they obviously mentioned about the super soldiers that they're developing, it all fits in the timeline. So even though they've made all these efforts to disconnect this film from Blade Runner, it still fits perfectly in the timeline, which I think is still a really cool trick.
Oh, well, I mean, I can only agree with you. I've never seen Blade Runner. So the discussion is kind of short here, just because, I mean, I'm really, really picky with my sci-fi films. So I don't watch a lot of sci-fi. I don't, and then at the same time, I don't, like I said before, I haven't watched a lot of Kurt Russell films either. So this is a whole new experience for me.
Yeah, I mean, Kurt Russell, he's an old school actor like Harrison Ford. I mean, he does a lot of his own stunt work in the film because it's not like the fighting and physical work. They don't view it as being stunts. They just call it physical acting, which I thought was really great. And he actually broke his ankle during the filming of the film. There was a fake press release that said that he'd broke it performing a stunt when actually he'd fractured it tripping over an ornamental cabbage. So that's probably slightly less cool.
Yeah, probably.
So they may have explained why they wanted to cover that one up. When this film came out, I thought Kurt Russell hadn't worked in a while, but looking on his filmography, this comes after Breakdown and Escape from LA, so this film was actually sort of fell, so we had this film, and then he takes a break into 2001 when he does 3,000 Miles to Graceland, and starts doing some lesser known films, like he did like Dark Blue, and then he starts coming more back to the forefront really around 2006, 2007 when he does like Poseidon and Death Proof, and then obviously he's now doing the Fast and Furious movies, and I think it's really, really cool. But certainly at one point Keanu Reeves was signed on to it, was attached to this film, as well as during its developmental history. Clint Eastwood really liked the script and was going to direct at one point, but eventually dropped out. So it's certainly seen people come and go. Sylvester Stallone was originally going to play this part as well, but he decided to go off and make First Blood instead. Whether this film would have worked in like sort of that heyday of sort of muscular action heroes, and whether that was the best move for Stallone to do First Blood, obviously the first iconic outing of the Rambo character, instead of doing this film. I can't help but wonder, is an alternate timeline where Soldier is this amazing franchise, like that's his Rambo. So instead of like Rambo in Vietnam, we just got Rambo in space instead.
Oh my goodness. I don't know. You can go a lot of what ifs, right? Whoever would have been tagged on. I guess people who dropped out of this project probably was happy that they did because it flopped. But would them being connected to the project have changed the quality of the film? No one knows, right?
It's hard to say, because there's so little information on the actual production of this. They have never updated the DVD of it, and anyone who follows our Instagram or Twitter feed would know we had a good week's fun just like looking at the disc of this, because
the funny part is because you are the one who photographed that DVD, and then I went and picked out my DVD that same week. And I was about to watch it, and I looked at it, and I was like, "Wait a minute, this is the same thing as yours."
Yeah, because this is one of the first DVDs that came out, so it's in a cardboard sleeve. It's also a flipper, which if you're not old enough to remember DVDs first came out, they never used to all be on one side of the disc. So we can like cure diseases and put a man on the moon, but we can't fit a whole movie on the same side of the disc. So you would normally get like partway through, and then you'd have to get out your chair and flip the disc over, and it was just a nightmare. And This disc is still in its flipper state. They've never updated the disc. There's a Blu-ray now available for it, which I would hope that you don't have to flip.
I've never seen a Blu-ray to flip. Have you ever seen one that flips?
No. This is the thing.
No.
I've not seen a Blu-ray. I don't think you have to flip Blu-rays. I think they.
No. They have a rather high capacity.
Yeah. So I don't know. Maybe someone's nostalgically made a Blu-ray flip. Just because it's like it's not the same experience unless I have to get out my chair halfway through to flip it.
Then I tell you, you go and buy yourself a laser disc. You gotta flip all of those babies.
Laserdisc is collecting Laserdisc. I think that's up there with like collecting cinefilm. It's a whole other art. Laserdiscs are like this whole category to themselves. It's people like when I say, oh, it's like VHS. It's an obsolete format, but it's really not. It's like a DVD, but you're getting like original theater cuts and the framing's better. And I think we could do a whole episode just talking about why Laserdiscs are still worth collecting. So that may be something for future, because otherwise we're going to go off on a major tangent. But certainly something that we haven't mentioned here when we talk about the cast. Gary Busey turns up as a military officer in this, and it's a very reserved Gary Busey, because normally he's mad as a box of frogs. But here, apart from analogies about what his daddy taught him, he's very reserved here, and I thought, wow, that's a kind of a low-key performance from him, and we get to see Michael Chiklis with hair, which threw me as well. For myself, I mean, this is a film still well worth discovering. I mean, it's one of those delightful hidden gems in Anderson's filmography. From here, I mean, this was his last film before he sort of really launched into the stratosphere directorial-wise, and from here, I mean, he goes on to make the Resident Evil movies and really gets associated with being like a video game director. So this is sort of like his last sort of experimental film, so to speak, because where we obviously, I mean, as we said before, I mean, Mortal Kombat's like his version of Enter the Dragon. For myself, this feels very much like him trying to recreate Alien. There's so many shots that feel, and certainly when you look at the military hardware, that just brought to mind Alien when I'm watching this. Certainly when they're escaping the planet in the dropship at nukes.
Mm-hmm.
And I also love the fact that the nuke looks like a football, because, you know, the nuclear football. But yeah, I mean, I think this is a film certainly well worth discovering. Even if you're just watching it for some throwaway action fun, I mean, it delivers as an action film. It's a little bit of a slow burn in the first half, where it's sort of more focused on sort of the hard sci-fi element. But I think it for myself, it more than delivered. I really enjoyed it, and it makes me regret not obviously watching it sooner. But I mean, Kim, have you got any sort of final thoughts on this one at all?
Well, yeah, I mean, I do think this one is worth discovering. It is definitely a hidden gem. I would, like, amongst the hidden gems, if it was between Soldier or Shopping, I probably would watch Soldier over that other one.
Yeah.
Just because I feel like the story here works well enough for what it wanted. Like, I guess it's a lot more complex than kind of like the sci-fi action that you would have expected. So that kind of, you know, there's a decent amount of humor in it that kind of works as well, just with what they're trying to do. And yeah, so I mean, and plus they have like really, really beautiful sets. I think like I keep saying that it's the scenes and the framing, and I'm a huge nerd in that sense, so I really love watching movies that are visually very appealing to my eyeballs. So it works really well for me, and definitely I think, like, because the movie's not really long, it kind of goes by really fast. I don't even think the first part was really slow paced. Things move along fairly quickly. So it is one that's definitely worth discovering if you are, one, a Kurt Russell fan, and two, a sci-fi action fan. Just something in that category that you know, I think it delivers fairly well.
What would you?
I mean, obviously, like, if you were, as we usually do before we end the show, what would you pair with Soldier?
For Soldier, I mean, initially I wasn't sure what to pair it with, and then I had a couple come to me. First off would be No Escape from 1994. This is from Martin Campbell and stars Ray Liotta, Lance Henriksen as Ray Liotta basically plays this soldier who, at the opening of the film, is charged for murder because he kills his commanding officer, and is essentially dumped on this prison island where the inhabitants have broken off into two separate camps. You've got the psychopaths that are hanging out in the jungle, and then you've got the more peaceful convicts who are hanging out by the shoreline. And basically, you are watching these convicts who are trying to form a new society on the island, at the same time having to worry about these psychopaths in the jungle who obviously have all the weapons, they have all the equipment, and are basically threatened to overthrow the island. It's got, certainly there are elements in this, certainly when we look at the society elements that were brought to mind, the scavenger society we see in Soldier. The more obvious one when it comes to post-apocalyptic would be from 1989, and that is Albert Pruitt's Cyborg, with Jean-Claude Van Damme as the martial artist wandering the apocalyptic wasteland and generally doing his thing. This, like many of Albert Pruitt's movies, is a bit of a cult classic, and it has actually released a director's cut that is available out there as well, which actually improves a lot of the pacing of this film. But while it's not Van Damme's best, it's certainly Van Damme in a post-apocalyptic setting. So if you want more of that, then that's definitely the way to go. And I mean, Kim, what did you come up with for your further viewing, though?
I actually went fairly recent. I went to 2013 for Ender's Game. Ender's Game is sci-fi action adventure. It also focuses on kids pretty much being trained into the military to fight these hostile aliens called Formics who have attacked Earth. And they're sent off pretty much into space to learn how to deal with gravity and deal with all these things in the setting that they have to fight them. And it's based on, obviously, the Ender's Saga by Orson Scott Card, who is really, like, I find the movie is not quite as compelling as the books themselves. It kind of, like, loses in translation what it does, but it also does this whole, humanity kind of concept behind, training kids into military and just the toughness of the things that you see in the mental and physical challenges of the whole ordeal.
Yeah.
And, I think that film really compares to this one in a lot of ways, both sci-fi, action, and just like that emotional journey that they go through, I guess.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, that's certainly a fantastic choice. Another film that I've yet to watch, but I mean, this idea of training kids for military combat, I mean, it's such a great, I'm not saying it's a great idea to feature this, but the way it's certainly handled here, and certainly from what I've seen of Ender's Game, it works well. I mean, it's certainly something that we didn't mention as well when we're having those flashbacks and we see the young child as a child and just how young these kids are, like, ready for war. When he's like encouraged to beat the living snot out of one of his fellow classmates, and on the background you can see the alphabet chart has been replaced with military words, so it's like armor, battle, combat, fight, go, harm, impair, jerk, kill, murder, nuke, obey, punch, quell, rage, x-ray, and yell.
How many X words do you have? Come on.
Xenophobe.
I'm not sure that applies to war. Imagine they had done this movie and then they put xenomorph in there just for good measure. Just
it
so
would
that
not surprise me. I mean, he includes a reference to Marvin the Martian in this bloody movie, so. But yeah, I mean, I would say we had fun with this one.
Absolutely.
But Kim, I mean, where do we go next?
We're going into 2002 with Resident Evil, one of my ultimately favorite franchises. I know you're still working through them, but they are my favorite franchises. So
yeah, this is going to be a big one. As we're not just doing Resident Evil, we're looking at like the big old slab of Resident Evil here because
Yeah.
I have still got
Well,
to watch the last one, but yeah, it's gonna be
yeah.
exciting.
To be fair, we're gonna only do the ones that are directed by Paul W.S. Anderson. Maybe talk a little about because he did, I think, do some screenplay or some producing work for the two in the middle that he didn't direct. But like really how the story and how he's structured the Resident Evil universe based on the video game with the same name.
Yes, I mean this is obviously the series which gave him the moniker of being a video game director, and certainly the one which I think opened more doors for him than many of his other projects perhaps did. So certainly I think that it's going to be certainly an interesting one because it's certainly not a series that kept to one tone. It went through many different ideas, and I think it's one of the more personal projects for Anderson. So I'm going to look forward to diving into that one on the next episode. In the meantime, you can obviously follow us on Instagram. We are on Twitter as well as Facebook as well. So please let us know what you think of the show and your thoughts on Paul W.S. Anderson's filmography. Also, if you're listening to us on Podomatic or iTunes or Stitcher or SoundCloud or anywhere where good podcasts are found, make sure that you do hit that like and subscribe button, as well as leave us some reviews, as it all helps to get the show more out there and helps more people obviously discover what we're doing. But thank you all for listening, and thank you, of course, to my co-host, Miss Kim Lowe.
Thank you to you.
And we will be back next time when we will look at the Resident Evil franchise. But until then, gas on!